Hi, welcome to Old Guys Gentlemen's Flex Fountain Pens. And this is episode number 23, I think. It'll say in the title. And today I've got a review of a Waterman number 31. And what makes this interesting is the filling mechanism, and it's not a Waterman, not an LE Waterman. Almost all the Waterman pens I have are LE, Lewis E. Waterman. This is Arthur Allen Waterman, who was a drummer for L.E. Waterman in the late 1800s. And what a drummer did is they drummed up business. And at some point he decided he could make more money going off on his own and take advantage of the Waterman name and founded his own company and started making pens. So I guess Lewis Waterman felt kind of betrayed, and they ended up suing him. And so he folded that company, found some new partners, came up with another design, opened another company. And I think, I'm not an expert in this history, but I think then that the A.A. Waterman Company again sued him. He formed another company with some other partners, and that's around the time that they came up with a patent for this pen with a twist filler. Let me talk a little bit about twist fillers before going on in this. This is another Waterman pen. It's typical of the lever fillers. If I pull this apart, what you'd see is this section where the nib come out, and attached to that would be a sack. And it is shellacked onto a stub on here, so that when you lift this lever, there's a bar in there that will squeeze that sack and create a vacuum, and then when you release the lever, it sucks ink back up into it. And that's how that works. Well, I'm not sure why they came up with this pen over a nice, simple, good idea like this. There's probably some advantages. I'm just not aware what they are. But in this one, there's the same feed section, the same stub there, and this does get shellacked there. But this end is open, and there's another piece in here that is threaded all the way up into this thing. It also threads into the end of the barrel here. And then there's a stub on it where you can, with this end being open, you can glue that on there. So that then what you do, instead of pressing down on it with a lever, with this knob, what you end up doing is you twist it. It's like wringing out a towel or something. But when you do that, you're squeezing stuff closed. Maybe it's more efficient than a lever filler. I don't know. But I don't think so, and I'll tell you why in a second. Anyhow, that expels the air, and then when you release it, because of that vacuum, it pulls the ink right back up into it. The thing that makes me nervous about this is there's only shellac holding it on this end and only shellac on this end, and there's no stop on this thing when you're turning it. So you could just merrily just keep turning this thing, and as you turn it, you're doing two things in the end. One is you're putting kind of a torsional force that makes it want to rip away from the stub, rip away from that shellac holding it. And it also shortens it, so it's also pulling it away from the stub. What I should probably do is an experiment where I just use water, not ink. Because if this thing does pull away, there's these nice little breather holes in here, there and there, which I assume would start leaking ink if it pulled away. But yeah, the experiment would include some water and see how far I have to turn it to get a full load. See how far I have to turn it before it comes loose. So maybe if I get a week where we get nothing but rain up here in Portland, that would be an interesting thing to do. In the meantime, when I fill it up, it's always kind of is that gonna? Oh, that's probably enough, and then I stop. So I probably never quite fill it. Which means I'm probably getting more ink in a lever pen than I here, just because of the fear factor. And you shouldn't fear your pens. But I like this pen. I'm going to keep using it, and it's unusual. So anyhow, it's a Waterman 31. These started coming out in 1903. I don't know when they stopped making them. It's a twist filler. The nib says number 3 on it. There's number 3. And it says modern. And from the history I read, the company that he formed in the early 1900s was called the Modern Pen Company. And even the clip, you can't read this that well, but it says modern as well. But on the barrel, it says the Reservo Pen Company out of Chicago. If I find out more, I'll put a little remarks on the screen here. Let's talk about dimensions. Uncapped, it's a great length for me. This is probably one of my longest uncapped pens. It's 13.9 centimeters. Capped, it's 14.8, and posted, it's probably one of my longest pens at 17.2 centimeters. The section, I wish the section would be a little bit larger, but it's 0.8 millimeters, and that's not bad. The barrel diameter is 1 centimeter, which I find in a lot of these pens, they're all right around 1 centimeter. The real star of this thing is the nib. It runs from triple extra fine, sometimes finer, depending on how light of a hand you use, up to a triple broad plus, 4, 5, 6 broad. It's thicker than you ever want to work at. And in fact, I usually work right in this area right here. It's very responsive. It's a little wet when you flex it. And a lot of people like that because some inks do some cool stuff when you lay down a lot of ink. It makes me nervous. I guess I'm a nervous kind of guy because it's easy to smudge things before they dry. But it's pretty responsive, very wet, and I think I might be able to fix that because I was looking at the nib here, and the feed kind of pulls away. So I bet I could make that a lot better by heat setting that. I had to heat set it at one point, so I'm not sure why it looks like that right now, but that I think would help improve the flow. A lot of times when you heat set, things flow more, but it can also make it so the ink flow is appropriate for what you're trying to write. So the good thing is that it's a great nib, nice flex, good line variation. It's a nice, simple look to it. The clip works, but I don't use clips anyhow. So the clip has a little bit of a cheap look to it, but it's got a cool shape. Stuff that is kind of questionable in between good and bad is the flow is a little bit too wet when flexed. I think I might be able to fix that. There's some difficulty with resacking, and a lot of you users out there won't take your pens apart. I do it because it's fun. So if you're not going to be resacking a pen and you see one of these things that have been serviced already and upgraded with a new sack, then I say go for it. You won't have to worry about the resacking. The twist filler makes me nervous, but you don't always have to have a full sack full of ink. And I know I can turn this a rotation or two and not have any problems. And most of the bubbles come out. You take a look at the ink while you're turning it, and I think I'm filling it a fair amount. By the way, the other interesting thing about this pen, it had a crack in it, and so I end up fixing it. It's not as pretty as maybe some people could do. But I've found out that this Loctite, I think it's 480, really bonds this stuff well together, so that I can put pressure on this back and forth like this. And these are fairly tight fit in here, and this thing won't separate anymore. So I've kind of stopped that crack in its tracks. So anyhow, I think this pen, because it's unusual and because the nib is so good, is probably a keeper for me. I haven't done any writing on here. I did an earlier version of this, and get rid of this. Let's do another C. I don't know if you can see, but I just laid a big glob of ink down there. Trying to remember to do some more writing examples. What comes after F? So it lays down a lot of ink. In fact, the A doesn't have to look like that. Let me do another one of those. It's all in the pressure of the hand. So anyhow, I hope you got some value out of that. And until next time, goodbye.